before the video we started discussing what do we include as a part of Asia. What does Asia mean? When I'm asking about Asian Australian couples, what do we include? And one of the things that came up was about how we learned quite, maybe we weren't taught growing up about the term West Asia so much, and heard more Middle East, and were educated about like how to appropriately address that later on in life.
Yes.
And what would that be?
Vietnamese, Asian, Southeast Asian, yeah.
I do. So I'm half Lebanese and half Syrian. I came to find out like I think 2 months ago that I might have family in Argentina.
Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't know this, but like I have a lot of family in Germany, like cousins that Russia, not Germany, Russia. They moved to Russia. So yeah, I only found out recently that I had like a lot of like,
Different
a mix,
backgrounds.
but I'm Lebanese and Syrian.
Yes, I'm Filipino.
Vietnamese.
Yeah, I'm Korean and Chinese.
Yeah, I'm Vietnamese. Vietnam.
My dad was born in England, in Liverpool, but haven't been there. So, yeah, maybe a little bit. Probably English, but I mean, it's very Australian.
Yes, other than identify myself as Australian, because I am Australian citizen now, I also culturally I identify myself as Chinese.
Kind of. I grew up internationally, and I grew up primarily in Southeast Asia, and so I wouldn't say that I am a part of Southeast Asian culture, but it's influenced a lot of things in my life and a lot of things about me and the practices that I hold, and also just international culture. I think going to international schools and those sorts of things. I think that's a culture in and of itself that is quite different to Australia.
My dad is very Greek. My mum is very Australian. And they're both very divorced. So I grew up in two households with very distinct cultures, very separate cultures. When I was at my dad's house, sometimes we'd speak Greek, we'd eat a lot of Greek food, we'd go to Greek church, I went to Greek school. And then when I was with my mum, very Aussie, I suppose. But even now that, especially living in Australia, having grown up with Greek culture, I think that influences a lot of the stuff that I do. I still cook a lot of Greek food. I speak the Greek language. And I'm also Greek Orthodox, and I think that impacts me a fair bit.
Oh my God, lots. Yeah, my mother is French Canadian, so that kind of makes me part French Canadian. And my father's side are German, hence my surname, Leibold, and Irish as well. And of course, I was born in America, so I guess that's an identity. And now I live in Australia. Yeah. And I spent most of my life in Asia. Yeah. So I'm pretty confused from an identity standpoint.
And how long was it that you lived in Asia, more specifically?
I'm trying to, the total number of years would be close to 10. So I have lived in Nanjing for a while, lived in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, and Hong Kong.
So Hong Kong twice.
I do Hong Kong twice, okay. Well, Hong Kong changed actually. So I lived in Hong Kong before it was a part of the PRC, and then after it was part of the PRC. So I counted twice.
Two people that are not of the same race. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry I laughed, but you were, yeah. I mean, there's no right or wrong answers.
Yes, I'm in one myself.
Well, do you know the background of the person that you're in one with?
Yes, he's Greek.
I've never been in an interracial relationship, but I do know someone that has been in a relationship but completely different cultures. So the girl was Lebanese and the guy that she married was Iraqi.
Married you.
Yeah,
Wow.
married an Iraqi. And in the Middle Eastern culture, it's not as how do I explain it? It's not as easy as it seems. Like, oh yeah, they're two Middle Eastern people, it's easy. No, it's completely different cultures. So to see it with my own eyes, a Lebanese girl and an Iraqi guy, see the two families combined, it was like honestly amazing. It was beautiful.
Yes. What's your experience of that?
Good experiences. So my cousin, never been with a Filipino. She's always dated other backgrounds. It's all, there's no difference. Like they treat each other as equals.
And if I may ask, what was the background of the people that she dated? Was there a bit of a trend? Or?
Like Macedonian, Australian, and I think Italian.
One of my mates is half Aussie, half Chinese, and is dating a girl who's half Chinese and half English.
The one who was half Chinese, half English, grew up in China or England or Australia?
Singapore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she's studying here and they met at a gym in the city.
Yeah, I have one mate. He's in a relationship with a Chinese person. He's Caucasian.
I haven't tried interracial relationship, but my friend is, my best friend, he's Chinese and now he's dating Australian.
I had a Taiwanese girlfriend for a while, so I guess that I did have an interracial relationship for 4 or 5 years. Do I know? I mean, no one in my immediate family. None of my. I've got a big kind of extended family in the U.S. No one. So, I would still say in kind of my circles, unusual. Yeah. Not unheard of, but unusual. Not common. Totally. I just think. I know some people. I won't name names. Who are in relationships with people from other European countries, and even that can be sensitive. You know, if you're, a kind of Aussie male marries a Greek Australian, even that can cause tension. And I think when you add the racial difference in, of course, it's controversial because it's more physical. Yeah, it's like. You can see it, right? And I know there are a lot of people who are still kind of uncomfortable with that. I think less and less so. But if we're talking in the Australian context. And it's probably even more common in the US. But still not, it's not the norm by no means.
I studied in Folachov like 1 year.
And before then, you were at Monash, right?
Yeah.
And you experienced a very different demographic at the two different campuses.
Yeah, probably like in Monash, there's a lot of Chinese students there, also Asian. Yeah, and yeah, they date a lot between Australia and Asian.
So, do you think that you noticed more interracial couples on the Monash campus than you did on the La Trobe University campus?
Because I studied in Monash longer than La Trobe, so I think Monash have more interracial couples.
I think it will be changing. I think things always been changing, right? So I think there might be more and more interracial relationships with more, international students who come to Australia to study, and you can often see if you really talk to students, sometimes they will share their story with you. You can tell, yes, there are a lot of interracial relationships going on there. So I think, I might say that there might be a little bit more interracial relationships in the future than what we have now, and I will be happy to see that happen.
Me too. I hope that happens as well. One thing that might influence this, though, is I heard a few days ago that the coalition announced that 80,000 international students the numbers will reduce by 80,000 for international students coming into Australia in the near future, and that also visa prices for those students that do come will be increased. So do you think that this will have an effect on our projections of what interracial dating in Australia looks like?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, of course. That's a big number, right?
Yeah, right.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a good question. I think definitely the nationalities is a big thing. I feel like when it's not in the same, like I'm Asian and he's on like on that side, it's a bit more harder with families and stuff. I found. No, don't want to go too deep or anything, but yeah, it was a struggle for our families to sort of come together, or for me to even meet his family, just because they wanted him to meet another Greek, let's say. But yeah, so yeah, little things like that. Yeah.
Is your boyfriend something like, what kind of generation of Greek Australian is he?
I think he's second or third generation. Okay. Yeah.
So it's interesting to notice that there's still those traditional
Very
Greek
traditional
values passed down.
Yeah, I was a bit shocked too. I didn't realise, but we worked through it. It was an obstacle, but we got through it. But yeah, I was a bit shocked myself because my mum, she's not, she doesn't really care as long as I'm happy as well. But yeah, same with his family now. But yeah, it was an interesting hurdle to get over. Yeah.
And how long did it take for the two of you to meet each other's parents?
Our parents actually haven't met yet still. It's more so just like me meeting his parents and him meeting my parents and stuff. So yeah, haven't got there yet. But yeah.
And how long have you two been together?
We've been together for 4 years now. Wow. Yeah.
And I do know, because Jasmine and I actually known each other for a while now, that you guys have just gotten back from an overseas holiday to Japan.
Yes.
How did your family react to you going away together?
Well, this isn't the first time. We've been to Japan. We went to Japan last year, so that was first year. And we have so many interstate sort of holidays that we go to. So yeah, it wasn't the first time. They're very chill now compared to what they were like years ago. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on each of the people's upbringing and you know, the framing of the question. I feel like makes it seem like a racial thing, and I feel like as a racial thing it would be separate from a cultural thing, and a cultural thing would depend on whether or not someone, you know, the Asian person has grown up in Australia and has, you know, been integrated in the culture for their whole life, which is very common. And so there would probably be far fewer cultural differences, but there would probably still be a racial element that, you know, for example, a white person, even if these two people have grown up like 2 suburbs away from each other and they, you know, have had pretty much the same upbringing, a white person just wouldn't be able to understand the experience of being an Asian person in West Australia, versus if someone, you know, grew up in Asia for their whole life and grew up surrounded by those cultural customs and those sorts of things, and so would then be adjusting to Australian culture, and the cultural differences would be a lot bigger. And so I think in those sorts of cases it would probably be more difficult. It also, I feel like, depends on family, because a lot of those times with, like, a lot of the struggles that couples have about cultural differences stem from family, because that's where culture often comes from. And so, you know, it depends on how steadfastly people's family, you know, if, you know, engages with their culture or whatever, or how open people's family is to other people's culture. I think that's where those problems would either arise or not arise.
A big thing for me that would probably be a problem or something I would have to work out with the partner would be gender roles. I feel like a lot of the cultures in Asia have very set in stone ideas of like gender roles, and a bit less like free to make decisions outside of that and feel safe.
They spend a lot of time with their families, and a lot of extended families. So whoever, if you're dating a Filipino, I guess you'd find that you'd come to their place a lot more.
Okay. Very family oriented.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And do you think that this might prove to be a challenge for a non-Filipino to date a Filipino person if they are also family orientated?
No. They would do the same, and like if it's also part of their culture or part of their background. But then you'll just be dealing with a lot of family on both sides. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything that would clash. Like, not even if you have different religions, it wouldn't really matter. Like, it's not like something that would be of conflict. That's what I feel.
He's kind of a picky guy with food. So when he went over to her house in China, he didn't like a lot of the foods that were served. So they had a bit of arguments over it and why he wouldn't eat them.
Did you say like picky? Like
Yeah,
a picky eater?
He's a picky guy.
And do you think that there are any other hardships that Australian and Asian couples might face today?
I think cultural sensitivities, maybe. Like, just a wild example. Koreans don't like being gifted shoes as from a couple to couple because it's like a superstition that they'll run away. So that's why you shouldn't gift each other shoes to a Korean person, or like a knife, because then they're afraid you might kill them.
It's a superstition?
Yeah, superstitions. Yeah, just amongst Korean people.
And what about couple shoes? Is that included in the superstition with Korean people?
Yes. Yeah, it is, yeah.
In Asia, there's a lot of big different culture than Western country. Like, we have a lot of rules in country, and like some people in Australia might not accept that rules. Yeah. And our parents very strict about if the one that their son dating fight back against that rules, that will be terrible.
Can you please give some examples of the rules that you're talking about?
Like, in Australia, you can go out with friends. Yeah, you can be only girls in a group of boys. In Asia, that's not allowed.
What are some differences, some examples that you might give between how you've been raised in northern China to how your husband's been raised in southern China?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think if you know well enough about China's culture, you can tell there are a lot of differences between the northern part of China and the southern part of China. So first of all, it's very obvious we eat food, different foods often. In the northern part of China, we eat a lot of noodles, dumplings, or anything that made of flour. While in southern part of China, the staple food is mainly rice. Yes, and also for different even for the same festivals, like the biggest one, Spring Festival, we both
Like the
celebrate
Lunar
it.
New Year?
Yeah, but we may eat very different food for that. Yeah, in the northern part of China, always jiaozi is the essential one, but in the southern part, jiaozi is dumpling is not the essential part of the, that banquet for Spring Festival. They always prepare a lot of different dishes, like fish or lobster or, yes. So that's quite different. And also I think the relationship, how they, I think in the southern part of China, they tend to have a very big extended family. Whereas for me, I think I don't have that very big extended family. So I think a lot of different. Also, we speak very different language. Definitely, I speak Shandong dialect, which he can understand a little bit. But when I go to his province, go to his hometown, I can't understand at all what they are talking about. So it's totally a new language to me. So that is a big challenge. So yeah.
Which sounds like it'll also be a challenge for us as your Chinese students since we're not native either.
Yes.
European culture because we grew up here, so we're more Aussie. But then it would depend on the family because they could be really
Traditional?
yeah, traditional. So depends. But for me, I would say Aussie.
Like more.
Like my family
European
doesn't go
leaning
temples and stuff. Whereas I know other families they like to go church, like to an Asian church, go temples often. But for my family, not really.
How do you think it would be received if a non-Asian person attended an Asian church? Do you think Asian churches are commonly found in Australia?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. There's one in Laylor. My mum goes to it.
Oh.
There's one in like most suburbs where there's a lot of Asians. And then if a non-Asian goes to it, that doesn't matter.
Probably European, unfortunately. We live in a colony, so very white influenced.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think there is no definite answer to this question because now you know Australia. Yes, I think traditionally in the very beginning it's mainly the people are from were from Europe, but now in the last 20 or especially the last 10 years, plenty of Asian people, immigrants are coming to Australia. So now Australia is a multicultural and diverse culture country. So it's full of Asian people from China, India, or Japan, or Korea, and also full of people still from Europe. So I think depending on which stage you are asking, I think at the right moment, I think actually both culture are pretty strong. But also depending on which specific community or area you're talking about, I think people tend to live in different areas in Australia. Like I know in Melbourne there are quite a few popular Chinese community. Even of course they still have some white Australian people live there, but most of them are Chinese immigrants. So I can see the Asian culture is gaining more and more popularity right now. But I think in government or in universities or in some area, I think they're still mainly influenced by European culture, also maybe the church. Yes, so depending on which area you're talking about.
It matters to an extent. Depends on the people, but I wouldn't say it matters that much. Depends how different the cultures are. Does that make sense?
Do you want to elaborate? Do you mean that if they're by different cultures, do you mean like if one kind of Southeast Asian and another Southeast Asian Australian were together, there'd be less conflict than, say, European Australian with an Asian Australian?
Yeah, because they would understand more about the culture.
About each other's cultures.
Yeah.
I'd say in Australia probably less because everyone's like from somewhere. Because like my family's not all from here. Like my mum, I think my mum's side goes back quite a way, but I'm not like Indigenous Australian, so I'm not from here. Everyone's got like mixed backgrounds. I say maybe it's different in other places that identify as white. Like you have a long lineage of people who are only from England, but I think it's interesting like melting pot of cultures in Australia because everyone's come here from somewhere else.
I feel like probably less because there's a lot more, people are a lot more informed about different cultures nowadays than they used to be. And so, there are some things that, that I think bridging the gaps used to be a lot bigger. Whereas now, there might be not quite as many things that you'd have to, that people would have to like explain to each other about different cultures and that sort of thing. And I think people are, most people generally are more open-minded to things and And also, I think, Australia is a very diverse place. And so I think people are probably more used to engaging with other cultures than they would have been previously, just through exposure.
Yeah, a little bit. I'd say we're more open here to being with other cultures, whereas maybe in other, like if you're in Asia and you're in an interracial relationship, it might be seen as a little bit weirder.
Yeah, definitely a difference. I think in Asia it's and again, well, Asia needs to be deconstructed, right? So let me, because I do think that it varies. I think there are parts of Southeast Asia where ideas about interracial relationships might be different from, say, East Asia. But the place I know best, China, the rates of interracial marriage is very low, much lower than the US or Australia. And there's definitely a stigma around it. The relationships that would exist would tend to be Asian people together, like Korean and Chinese, or Japanese and Chinese. In fact, I know some people, Japanese and Chinese couple. And even that was not without complication because of the tensions in the past and sometimes in the present. And then you get to the really kind of relationships that are viewed as completely inappropriate, and that would be African and Chinese. And there are some mixed Chinese-African relationships, but they've often been stigmatized and criticized. And
within China?
Oh my God, yeah. Like, really feel sorry for those people. There was a contestant on one of these song contests who was the daughter of a Chinese African-American couple, and she was just taunted online. Really bad racist comments. So I generally think, China's quite a racist country. More so than a lot of other parts of Asia, and certainly more so than Australia or America.
Well, hopefully we'll see everyone as a whole becoming more open-minded in the future.
Yeah, I hope so too.
I don't really watch a lot of media in Australia.
I don't know about Australian stars. Yeah, I just know like there's a lot of Asian and Americans international relationship in media.
And what about, for example, I know that we both enjoy some Korean drama and some Chinese drama. What do you think about the representation of interracial couples in industries like those?
I don't think K-drama and C-drama have international relationship because they have a lot, like, admire the Asian relationship only.
And do you think that that's a lack in the market, and there might be a future for Korean dramas and other Asian dramas as well as Australian media to tap into? Do you think that it would be popular to see interracial relationships shown more in cinema?
Yeah, that's a good one because no one have tried that before. Because yeah, there are a lot of Asian only. So like, if they have Australia and Asian relationship, that's really special one. Maybe virals.
I don't think so. Well, I think that there's like, whenever there is, it's just like a token. They're never like the main characters. They're always just like oh, look, there's some representation. I'll just sprinkle that in for you. Like, it's never like realistic or important. Or if it is, it's the focus. It's never just like normalized.
Natural.
Yeah. Which, like, it's good to have some representation, but sort of feels forced.
I I'm not so familiar with this one, so I can't tell much from my own perspective. Maybe I guess. Maybe. Yeah.
I think it's become quite evident in my interviews so far that it's not a definite yes from anyone. So maybe we could be doing a better job in that in Australian media in the future.
No. Has it gotten better? Maybe slightly.
Do you think that there is a lot in Australian media in general? People don't seem to have heard of much in the Australian entertainment industry outside of our actors and actresses who we sent to the States and they now perform in Hollywood.
Not really. There's really, you think about most things that have been successful in terms of TV or cinema, they've been pretty white. And there hasn't been, I think Japanese Story is an example maybe where you see that, right? But it was also done in really stereotypical ways. What's Japanese Story, have you never seen the movie?
I've never seen it.
Oh my god, you should see it.
What's it about?
I don't want to spoil it to you, but it's about a Japanese man who comes to Australia for a mining project and is guided around by a very famous Australian actress, blonde hair. In Muriel's Wedding. What's her name?
I don't know her name, but
yeah, you know who she is. And they fall in love. And I won't ruin the ending. But you should watch it. It's a very good film. But it's interesting to look at it because it does have a lot of stereotypes.
Okay.
But yeah, it's kind
so
of.
So it's trying, but it
was
good
I think
for its time, but outdated for now.
Yeah, maybe. That's kind of my view. But but it's kind of an exception. I can't really think of any other ones.
I think, it is, because then you have your parents trying to influence, their grandkids if you have kids, cultures. I think ultimately it would be up to the couple. It should be, but you will experience conflict from family. It's just so my cousin's married to Chinese. His wife's Chinese, and his mom. So the Filipino side is like, your kids should be spending more time with, the Filipino side. Yeah, so there's a bit of that conflict, and he's like, it should be both. It's not a competition.
Yeah. Very open-minded.
Yeah.
If I was like in an interracial relationship, probably be more the other person, because I wouldn't say I have a lot of traditions at all. Yeah, I think of like Australian culture, and there's not really like a cuisine. It's like, maybe Bunnings, snags, or fairy bread. Like a lot of the other things you think of, they come from other places. So probably the other person, what I would take from my side of the relationship is being open and like being critical and analysing, just being like more progressive compared to other places.
I have one friend, one couple. The girl actually is from China. I know this. We call her a lady. She came here to study at Melbourne University about 20 years ago, and she met her husband here. And her husband is from England, and he was working here, and so they started to date with each other, and then later on they got married. Now they have 3 beautiful children, and they have very, I can tell, very, they're very good couple, have very harmonious, relationship with each other, have beautiful children. Yeah.
Your own family being mixed of Chinese background, now living in Australia, raising the children with both cultures, or more one culture than the other culture?
Okay, so you mean how do I actually raise my children, or my opinion on that? I think it can be to raise children in a mixed culture have its own great benefits from my perspective and experience, because the children actually can be exposed into, like in different cultural contexts. So it means they have an advantage of being adapting to different cultural context, since they were born, and so they won't. I believe they will be more flexible in future or comfortable to associate with the people from different cultural backgrounds. Like for me, I have got. My husband also from China, but he's from different part of China, the southern part, and I'm from the northern part of China. So both of us, are quite different in many ways. And when we come here, and we both of us face a total new Australian culture. So after so many years we have been living here, I think both of us carry on a lot of different culture, I should say, elements, within us. Yes, and we try to pass on that, these different cultural practices, values, try to our children. Of course,
Definitely just know it's not you. Know it's just how family and traditions are. People are very strong about their culture and what they believe in. It's nothing against you yourself. With your partner, definitely communicate towards each other and just remind each other that you guys are always there for each other. But yeah, don't ever blame yourself or think it's you. It's definitely not the case.
No. I'm going to be straight out, no. Like, we are still pretty old school. And I think it's very heavily, religion is very big. So religion is definitely involved. And I don't think my family personally would accept it, especially for the women. So the men, it's easier for them to marry outside because the tradition is they can take a woman in, but a woman can't take a man in, if that makes sense. So I've had a couple cousins marrying Australian women. It wasn't seen as a big deal. But then...
And by Australian women, do you mean like Caucasian, white Australian, or Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander? What kind of Australian do you mean?
I think just Caucasian. Yeah. Or like Greek, but super whitewashed.
Do you know about their families and how their families might accept their relationship?
They're pretty open. They're really accepting of it, actually.
Is your family, may I ask, like what generation of Vietnamese Australian are they?
First generation.
So your parents grew up in Vietnam?
Yeah.
Do you think that your parents would be open-minded to you dating someone outside of Vietnamese Australian background?
Yeah. I've asked them and they're like, yeah, they don't care as long as it's someone that you're happy with.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, my parents wouldn't mind. They're also an interracial couple, so I don't think they would mind.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about their experience as an interracial couple living in Australia?
They didn't really have any real hardships living in Australia as an interracial couple, but just from like their families, I guess. Neither parents or my parents approved the relationship that very much. They wanted to date within Chinese or Korean, but they didn't care, to be honest. So they just got married anyway.
So were they married in Australia or before coming to Australia?
They met in Australia.
Oh, okay.
So they got married here, and they also got married in Korea, like 2 times.
You know, like in Asia, the parents very strict, especially about foreign daughters. Yeah, that's why at first my parents' friends didn't accept that relationship, but you know, there's every time.
And what do you think your parents would say if you went home and told them that you were in an interracial relationship?
I think the first question they will surprise. Especially, I mean, I'm studying Australia, but they don't expect I have Australian girlfriends. Yeah, because they always believe that Asians should date Asian only. Better choice.
My parents would find it really weird if I told them that I was in an interracial relationship because they would just be like, so, a relationship? You're in a relationship? They would. That would just be a thing that is not even wouldn't be a consideration. I don't think to my parents or my family at all. They would be just kind of that would just be normal, and probably even expected because because I might have more in common with people who have not grown up in Australia or have different cultural backgrounds than white Australians who have lived here their whole life. So.
And what about your parents and their background before moving overseas with you? Where are their origins from?
Both my parents are Australian, white Australian. Both families, big extended families, have lived in Australia for generations. One side were settlers in Australia, and the other side were Irish. A couple generations back, they were Irish. And my parents both moved away from Australia in like their 20s for work, and they met overseas, and they met overseas and then continued living their life overseas while they had kids, and then we moved back because of COVID. So that's why we live in Australia now. But we probably wouldn't have otherwise. We probably would have just kept living overseas because that's what their careers are in.
I very briefly went out with a Malaysian girl. Went on like 2-3 dates, whatever. My mum was just happy I was going out with someone. My dad wanted to know if she was cute. That's about it. That was literally the extent of both conversations. I don't care. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So even though you've grown up with a very like Greek-orientated Australian family, your parents don't share the Greek traditionalism that some other Greek Australians tend to have?
I suppose that depends how you classify that traditionalism.
My parents would be like they wouldn't like mind, but they see like anything that is out of what they know is like very foreign. It's like a totally new concept for them. So yeah, there might be like some what's it called?
Adjustment?
Culture shock? Yeah.
Okay.
I think my mum and dad, we had a Japanese, one of my friends, he was staying with us for a year, and like there's things in their culture that they don't feel like comfortable expressing when they're not feeling comfortable, and so they'd have like a really non-reaction, and my mum was just like, why did he do that? I can't understand why he would do that. And it's like try to explain it to her, and she just would stonewall and be like, no, it's just not what you do here. Yeah, so they might have like a general not wanting to bridge their understanding.
Do you think that your parents have changed a little bit since you started studying linguistics and learning Japanese?
I don't think so. I think they're of like a different generation. You try and explain things to them, but for people to like understand, they always have to have a willingness to be open to understand.
I honestly believe it's personal taste. I don't think it's racist at all. So to be racist is to subjectively not like one race because of their race. But I think if you don't want to date someone because of their race, I don't think it's seen as racist, because you might not like a certain tradition that they have, or a value of theirs that comes with their culture. So that's just me personally. For an example, Hindu weddings, they're like massive. Like Indian weddings, they're pretty big, but they're pretty cool and colorful, but it's not what I want. Personally, I do want an Arab wedding only because I know the Lebo guy or the Syrian guy. I know that's what his family's going to want. And the women in his family, they're going to want to see that. Do you know what I mean? So it's not that I don't think other cultures can't do that. It's just personally, I just know an Arab can provide what I want, you know?
And we're not here to judge or to contradict whatever you're saying. Just here to have an open discussion about everyone's different opinions. And would you mind giving me an example of what value or tradition that another race or another group of people might possess that you think might conflict with your own?
Religion is a massive thing for me. I love my religion. I love my faith. I'm a Muslim, and I hope one day to marry a Muslim. I would love to raise my kids Muslim. In saying that though, I love my Christian brothers and sisters. I love my Jewish brothers and sisters. But personally, I do think about raising children, and I would love for my husband to teach my kids religion, and that would be Islam to me.
Personal taste. Whatever you like is whatever you like.
I think it's a personal preference because some it might be hard for some people to date outside of their culture. So, and some people might be more open to it, some people might not be.
For example, if, say, a Caucasian Australian man was to say that he would only want to date Caucasian Australian women, like, do you think that this is influenced by a form of racism and fear of the other races, the other backgrounds, or do you think that it's quite simple and just a preference?
I think it can be both. Yeah, because it's a very personal thing. I think both, those kinds of people exist still. Yeah, I think, but I think with the young generation, they might tend to be more like a personal preference. But still, some people, I think, they still hold the very, traditional value, try not to mix with other racial people. So I think, both might exist there.
I think it heavily depends on how someone is describing these racial preferences. I think that some people say that they have a preference, and they're just racist. They're just racist. They just don't like people who don't look the same as them. I think in the same way that people have preferences for, like, blonde hair, people have, like, when we're talking about racial as in physical, not like cultural or like ethnicity based, like we're just talking about someone's appearance. What someone looks like. Yeah, I think it's normal. Lots of people have a type. It's just the same thing as having a type. But also, most people who have a type, they wouldn't. If someone really, really, really likes people with blonde hair, but then meets someone with brown hair, finds themselves really attracted to them, their personalities really get along well, and they really like them and they like them back, they probably won't rule them out. Like, in the end, it doesn't matter that much, you know? Whereas with racial preferences, people will often just completely rule out anyone of certain races on the basis of, I just have a preference, even if they might actually be attracted to the person, but it's either either conscious or completely, it can also be completely subconscious. Like, I'm not saying that this is something that people are always doing super maliciously, but I do think that it can be exaggerated the amount that it really matters to most people, or that the harmless preference matters. That's what I mean. That is most specifically for white people, though, because I do think it's completely fair to have cultural preferences. Like, people of a certain culture wanting to date within their culture. Similar to, like, religion, Muslim people wanting to date other Muslim people. That makes sense. Or, people from, I don't know, a random country, Kenya. That's the first thing I thought of, Kenya. It makes sense if Kenyan people want to date Kenyan people because they're people that they share life experiences with and share culture with. Like, that makes sense. And I think that's totally acceptable. More so for non-white people, it's a little bit more iffy when it's white people because of the broader context. But I think people can have normal preferences.
I think we all think in racial frames, even if we don't acknowledge it, we don't recognize it. I think that's the way our brains work and the process of cognition. I think the key to kind of eliminating racism is getting people to think about the way they see the world, rather than sort of saying you just be like colorblind, because I don't think we can as humans. I think it's just the way we are, part of our human nature. I think that without a doubt it's a factor in the way people, and there's these issues about like families, like what if my daughter was dating someone from the PRC, right? Chinese person. How would I feel about that?
And also
it would
the
be complicated.
separation of people and the country's politics.
Well, for me, it'd be
complications.
the politics would probably be more complicated than the race. It would, not. I do think different generations probably have slightly different views. I'm kind of an older generation, so I think it varies and changing over time, but it's definitely a factor.
But for people who are able to recognise the racial framework that they view the world and perhaps notice an issue and how they aren't colourblind and do make assumptions based on prejudice and what they've been brought up with, do you think that there's a cure or some kind of method other than education?
I don't think there's a cure. I think it's education and being conscious about it, which means talking about it. I think the big problem in China is they don't talk about it. There's just no discussion. China says, well, we're not racist. That's something Americans do or other countries. They don't acknowledge it. Acknowledging it is the first step, so that education is really the only way to do it. And then I think as well, over time, if you have a more racially integrated population, that's going to help break it down as well. Because people see, they don't see themselves everywhere, really.
Asian generally seen as more reserved and cute. I think that's from a fetish point of view. That's just an observation.
I think it comes from Orientalism. Comes from like the idea of the West. So there's the other, and when the West like had contact with China and like the East, they sort of like mysticized them. Obviously with like a language barrier, I guess there is sort of an element of mystery.
When you mentioned how to a non-Asian person, hearing an Asian language that they don't understand might sound romantic and enticing and could possibly lead to a fetishization of an Asian person who speaks one of those languages, do you think that there's a correlation between what people think is the standard language that everyone should know, particularly if you want to work globally? It could be English or Spanish or Chinese. That's what comes to mind for me, but it could also be Hindi, other options as well.
With the setting of English
Yeah.
sort of being like the default.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you agree that everyone thinks that English is the default language, or do you think that that's an opinion?
I
only for
think
native English speakers?
it's definitely getting like that nowadays, especially with the internet, is like globalization. Like you get a new phone and the default is like English. You have to change the language settings, and a lot of the institutions, even in other countries, a lot of the universities like are all run in English. So I think it's like a thing that people adopt because the institutions are already like that default English. And so when everything is like the default, anything that's not standard is sort of interesting. And also if like something is in a language that you don't understand, you can choose to like only see the good things. I found like learning languages, the more you get like more fluent and like pick up subtexts and like things that you wouldn't like necessarily pick up otherwise. You sort of see all of it instead of just like the surface level, like face kind of things. Yeah, so if like you're only interacting with like the surface level, you can sort of fetishize and romanticize that because of language barriers.
So I have a big take on this one.
Yeah?
Because I come from not only like a religious household, I come from a massive community. So my community, everyone knows everything about each other. And the women in the community, it is unlikely for them to do something like jiu-jitsu or even just martial arts. So I have had people in the past tell me, but how do you do jiu-jitsu? You're a girl. And just that on its own, I personally, I don't even know how to answer that. Like that question, it's weird to answer. How do you do jiu-jitsu? You're a girl. It's like, okay, let's take a step back. Like the fact that it's straight to like going to my gender, it kills me because it's like, it's so bizarre to me that like people still think about that, you know? So personally with my culture, I don't think it's seen as feminine for girls to fight. Personally in my family, I only found out recently, my grandpa passed away when my dad was like 11, so I don't know anything about this guy. But my dad told me, because I asked my dad, I'm like, how would, we call them judo, we call grandpa judo. I'm like, how would judo feel knowing that I wrestle, I do jiu-jitsu?
And not just jiu-jitsu, Selena's really amazing.
Oh, no, I'm not.
I don't know if in this footage you can see her belt, but...
You're making me blush. Thank you. I asked my dad, I'm like, how would judo feel knowing that I do jiu-jitsu? You know, because I grew up knowing like judo's religious, judo's strict. My dad just looked at me with this like, massive smile. He's like, you don't know how happy he'd be. So to hear that just brought shivers down my spine because it's like not all men are like the ones that I've seen. There are good ones out there. And there are good ones in my culture out there. Because I saw a small group of men from my culture and thought they're all like that. They all abused me with their words saying I shouldn't be fighting as a woman. And then I found out someone from my own family, my grandfather, would have been so amazed. And in saying that, my dad's the one that pushes me to go to training, pushes me to fight, pushes me to compete. He's the one that really pushes me, more than my mum, more than anyone. And he's probably the most religious man I know. So it's a bit wishy-washy to answer because there's a group of men from my culture, from my religion that completely disagree with everything I'm doing. And then I have my dad and he's like all for it. It's hard as a young girl. I have a brother. He's around 28, I think. I think he's 28. He started jiu-jitsu, I think, last year. But he's been doing martial arts since he was a kid. So he's always had a knowledge of fighting forever. And seeing him go to his karate classes, his MMA classes, I remember being on the mats as a young girl. I was probably like, 4? And I remember just watching and going, I want to be like Bill. I want to be like Bill. And then we'd come home. Bill's my older brother. Okay. We'd come home and my dad would always have the UFC on, constantly watching the UFC and Bellator. And I just used to watch that TV and go, I want to be there. I want to do that. And I had this drive in me, but I didn't know what it was because I didn't want to box. I didn't want to do karate. It was just something else. There was something else that I wanted to do. And I did basketball for a bit, and I was an overweight child, pretty overweight. I got bullied very heavily in basketball, beyond heavily. I was very bullied. So that lowered my self-esteem on a whole nother level. And then my sister found this jiu-jitsu gym. It had freshly opened. So they just put me in, and I happened to be one of Link's first students out of 5. And yeah, ever since this was when I was 8 years old. So 2014 or 15, I really can't remember. Ever since, I just never left. Been here every day, loved it, found my passion, found my people, gained confidence, lost weight, started competing, lost every single competition, still lose quite a bit, but it was amazing. I love it. So this will forever be my life. Nothing will ever change it.
Oh my God, I want to clap.
No, it's my little speech, but I've always wanted to talk about like my little story. But yeah, no, this is literally my life right now. Like,
it's amazing.
It's beautiful. And I think every woman, every girl should do it. I swear to God. Like, this changed my life on a whole nother level. I even though I was 8 years old,
it changes
everything. Yeah. Even though I was only 8 years old, my view on life changed like drastically, and I was only 8. You know what I mean? So thank God I started that young. But yeah, that's my little story.
Thank you so much. You've been a humongous help today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. I love this side.
No, this is awesome, right?
I hope it turns out good. I go red.
In my culture, stereotypes. Well, I guess Filipinos are probably separate from, I guess, from other like Asian backgrounds. Filipinos are known to be very loud and outspoken. My family does comment on me doing jiu-jitsu, especially because I'm female and because of my age. Like, they always question, you should be like chilling out now, starting a family. Why can't you do both? I think it's good to have the discipline of martial arts, and I don't see why you can't have it all. Like career, hobbies, family. Yeah. But there is that traditional mindset, like women at a certain point should only be doing certain things. I know it's less of that these days. But like there is still some of that old school mindset.
Do you think the same worries are extended to males who jiu-jitsu as well?
I think less. Yeah.
So?
Yeah, less so. Because I guess it doesn't matter if they get injured or
bruise on the face, perhaps.
Yeah. Whereas, if I have a scratch on my face, I've had a few injuries. So my family's always like, that's why you should stop doing jiu-jitsu. And I'm just like, yeah,
So overall, would you encourage other women to pursue jiu-jitsu or different kind of martial arts despite protests with family? Do you think it's overall worth it?
Yes. Well, I'm biased to jiu-jitsu, but I recommend trying all the martial arts if you're interested, and you'll find the one that you connect with most. But personally, jiu-jitsu is the one that's helped me mentally and physically. Like, I've always been into fitness, like boxing, Muay Thai. That was my background. And then I was doing both at once, and then eventually I just like sunk into jiu-jitsu full time. It just helps me. I'm always switched on at work because I do this at night or morning. Used to be morning. It gives me energy. Despite if I'm tired after work, I'm re-energized when I'm here. Especially because of the social aspect on it.
Like, some might say that a stereotype for Asian women in general is like very cutesy. So if, say, an Asian woman in Australia does a martial art such as jiu-jitsu, which is a sport that I personally do, hence why I'm tapping into that a little bit, what does that mean for how they're perceived by people from their home country?
I think it can be really tricky, and it also depends on what country the person is from, because those sorts of things can be really, when people step out of gender roles like that, it can be really, really ostracizing for them when they then go back home, and lots of the time, like, I mean, it depends what country, but, people can get made fun of as well because a lot of those, like, defying gender norms like that can be attributed to Western culture and put down as, oh, you're just being westernized. Like, lots of my friends, lots of my friends who, I mean, growing up in Myanmar, but also, like, lots of people I knew in, like, Thailand, usually girls, who would step out of their gender roles, because we went to international schools and we were all exposed to lots of different cultures, but they were primarily, like, the school was an American school, so even though most people weren't American, it was still, like, the institution was American. And so people would, get, when people tried to express themselves in different ways, when they went back to their families and went back to other people, it would just get put down to, this is just a white thing, rather than this is an actual representation of yourself and what you want to do. It would just be, oh, this is just an American thing that you've picked up, and that's it.
I think a lot of the Asian cultures can tend to, like, infantilize women, like, take agency away from them. When you do things to challenge them, they don't like that. Even when I was living with my friend who's from Japan, I was making toast and he was having toast as well, and I put, like, a lot of Nutella on it, and he's like, oh wow, that's, like, you're really strong-minded. I was like,
I've also
what?
had similar experiences. Yeah.
Like, I just like Nutella. Like, I just wanted,
like, like, what you eat, how do I explain it? Also, with my experience living in East Asia last year, like, if you eat well, maybe a guy will kind of have an opinion. Doesn't necessarily mean it negative. Not, like, doesn't have to be negative, but just like, wow, you can do this? Wow.
yeah.
That was just kind of an experience, a shared experience. Yeah. Have you experienced anything similar, or perhaps not?
I have, but I feel like that sort of thing is the kind of infantilization of women and the kind of, like, that whole, like, idea, is much more prevalent in East Asian cultures than it is in Southeast Asia. I mean, women are still, like, not, treated as equals. Sexism is pretty bad, and it's pretty fundamentally built into the society as it is here. But the really specific thing of, like, women are small, women are petite, that's a very Japanese, Korean, Chinese thing. It's a it definitely still applies, but there are really specific beauty standards in Japan and Korea and
Like a
parts of
manual.
China. Yeah, there are really specific beauty standards. Growing up in Southeast Asia, we had lots of Korean people actually at our school. Like a lot of Korean people. And we also had lots of Southeast Asian people, obviously. And something that's a really big issue in Asia is colorism. It's a massive issue,
Like
colorism.
the shade of your color, or
Yeah.
the straight up color of your skin? Like
Well-
as in different shades of white, or
No,
black
as
and
in
white?
like different. No, as in like different shades of brown, like how dark you are.
To do with your social class, like that, like where
Kind
it's come
of,
from?
but like specifically in. I mean, I'm just going to use Japan as an example because Japan is notoriously bad for this. But in Japan, the beauty standards are being white, being very pale, very, very, very pale. People want to be very pale. And so they have, people will often tout Japanese beauty standards as Asian beauty standards when they don't actually apply to most of Asia because most people in Asia are not that skin color, but also people like even within Myanmar has countless ethnic groups. It has so many different ethnic groups. That's part of the reason that there's political conflict, and there has been since Myanmar was created, when they grouped a bunch of ethnic groups together that didn't agree to be part of one country together and said, you're now the same. And they're like, we're very different. But like they have lots of ethnic groups. And so within Myanmar, we would have Burmese people from different places. Like I had this one friend when I was in like 8th grade, and she was new to the school, but she was Burmese. But she had very dark brown skin, very dark brown.
Is that common for Burmese people?
It does happen, but it's not super common. People, I mean, it's hard to like generalize the shade of brown that Burmese people are. Yeah. But she had darker skin typically than most of the Burmese she in the ethnic group Bama, which is where the city that we're in. And she had a similar skin tone to many Indian people, to many like South Indian people, because there's similar ethnic groups in those areas and ethnic groups that cross over boundaries like that. But she was Burmese. She's always grown up in Myanmar. She's always lived there. Like, she is Burmese. She isn't Indian. She isn't Pakistani. She isn't Sri Lankan. Like, but when she got to school, she faced like harassment about where she was from because people were like, you're lying. You're lying about being Burmese. You're way too dark to be Burmese. And she's like, I'm not lying. This is where I'm from. This is where my parents are from. And she faced that harassment from Burmese people. It was other Burmese people who were doing the harassment of her because most of the non-Burmese people were like, well, I mean, I don't know. This is not my country. I can't dictate what color of skin Burmese people have. I don't know every Burmese person, whatever. If you say you're from here, then you're from here. Who am I to say any differently? But it was the Burmese people who were saying, you're too dark to be Burmese. Someone's lying to you. You are not a representation of us, stuff like that, which was really horrible.
Why is it even important for people to share that?
Exactly.
Comes from a mean place.
Yeah. So colorism is like a really big issue. Like, lots of people will talk about that in like Bollywood as well. How lots of the really famous actresses in Bollywood, they're brown women, but lots of them are quite light skinned, and it's not that Indian people, there aren't light skinned Indian people. Of course there are, but when you look at the entirety of Bollywood and the color of skin that pretty much all of the successful women in Bollywood have, most of them have significantly lighter skin than most people most women in India. And so it becomes like a, well, like, and so the beauty standard in India is much lighter skin than the majority of people have, which then makes it this really weird thing of like, well, how is this the beauty standard when most people
don't meet the standard,
and they can't change anything about that. They can't change the color of their skin. You know, yeah, there's lots of issues with that in different parts of Asia.
What about the it's okay because I'll hand it back to you. What about the successful men in Bollywood? Is it similar conditions?
I think so, but to be honest, I don't know as much about the men in the beauty standards for men in Bollywood. I know a bit about the beauty standards of men in like Japan. That's definitely also, I mean, the beauty standards for men in Japan is also really interesting because like they're actually very feminine. The beauty standards for men in Japan, by Western standards, obviously. By Western standards, because feminine and masculine are completely made up cultural concepts. But like, by Western standards, the beauty standards for men in Japan are often quite slim, quite young looking, no facial hair, quite pale. I mean, pale in the way that women are also expected to be not dark. But not to the extent that women are, and just kind of generally quite youthful, quite skinny, quite like, and quite, you know, quite. It's hard to describe, like feminine facial features, like soft, delicate. That's what it is, like soft, delicate facial features on men, which is very interesting compared to like Western beauty standards, and even Western beauty standards of Asian men. Western beauty standards of Asian men are different than Asian beauty standards of Asian men.
How so? What do you think are some Western standards for Asian men?
Well, I mean, this is by the way, this is not my idea. This is a video that I saw of someone talking about this. So it's not like I'm not an authority on this, and I am not Asian. But I saw someone talking about the reasons that that these big Asian, like all Asian productions that have been made in the past couple of years that were massive in like internationally and in Western societies, like Crazy Rich Asians and Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I've never seen the second one.
It's very good. Yeah, it's a movie with what's her name, Michelle Yeoh.
I've heard of her.
Well, she was also in Crazy Rich Asians. She was also in Wicked.
Wicked with the Ariana.
Yeah. But anyway, those two movies did really well internationally, and it was a big deal because, I mean, Crazy Rich Asians had an all Asian cast, and I saw someone talking about the reasons that they didn't do as well in Asian countries. They did fine, but like they didn't do like amazingly, and people didn't like love them because, for one thing, Asian people have Asian movies that the whole cast is Asian. Those are most of their movies that they make in their own languages with their own people. So that's not like, that was a crazy thing in Hollywood, but it's not that much of a crazy thing within Asia. But also something that they were talking about was that the men in those movies, or another example was the Marvel one that came out recently. I can't remember what it's called, but the men in these movies or whatever, they're very attractive Asian men, but they don't fit the beauty standards at all in Asia because most of them are like
big.
yeah, they're quite big. They have muscles.
I remember the Nick from
Yeah.
Crazy Rich Asians is like maybe fitting the Western standard
Yeah.
of an attractive male.
Exactly. And so talking about that, and I thought that was so interesting how these men don't fit the Asian beauty standard at all, even though they are Asian, but they fit the Western beauty standards. I thought it was a really interesting commentary.
Another thing that I found interesting as well, since we were highlighting Japan and you also have a specialization with Japanese language and culture, is that I recently found out after my time in Japan that Japanese people in their language, they have, I don't know the word, but they have a word to explain like Japanese with dark skin and Japanese with light skin. Apparently there's kind of two groups and it's to do with where originally the family is from in Japan. Because obviously Japan is huge. It's not just a few places. So do you maybe know much more about this? Because like we were talking about the Japanese beauty standard for pale skin, whereas a lot of Japanese people are not pale skin Japanese.
I'm like thinking of the thing that you're thinking of. Like a lot of the paler Japanese people come from like they descend from the Yamamoto line, and when Japan colonized the other islands, so they've got Hokkaido, they had got the Ainu, which is their indigenous population, and they a similar thing to what we tried to do here in Australia. They tried to breed them out, try to eradicate like completely ethnic cleansing levels kind of thing, and they tend to be more like have more like dark tan sort of features, and the same with Okinawa and like the lower parts of those islands. They're called the Ryukyuans. Yeah, they've got like so many different island populations. Even with we've got like a really big Filipino diaspora in Japan, and so when that happens, you have people of mixed races, and they call them hafus, call them halves, and like they face a lot of discrimination. They say like, oh, you don't have pure blood. Your blood is mixed.
And that's a bad thing?
Yeah. They say like you're not properly Japanese, and some people I've seen online who do have mixed races, they've lived there in Japan their whole lives. They don't speak any other language besides Japanese. They're like ethnically Japanese.
I think more people will become more open to dating interracially. As you should. You connect as people. Obviously, you identify as a person. The end should be about connecting.
I think there'll be more.
Yeah?
Yeah.